Hello, it's my pleasure to be speaking here at this conference. Thank you, Latha, for inviting me. I do regret the fact that we can't all be together to meet and network, but I tried to record this in such a way that it still feels like a real keynote. So my talk today has a title in triplicate, and that's because it's a story that's going to be told in 3 parts. My name is Gershenson. I am the director of the Penn State Humanitarian Engineering and Social Entrepreneurship Program, and also the CEO of Keynote, a manufacturing company based in Kisumu, Kenya. I'll talk about each of those later, but let's get to chapter 1 of this story first. So, chapter 1 begins on a rooftop in Kisumu, Kenya. We have a new startup just about to launch its first product, and we are meeting with some trusted advisors. Our first product is the Malele tube. Malele tube is an airless inner tube that sits inside a regular tire that, because it has no air, it will never go flat. So for people who earn a living on their bicycles, they never have to deal with flat tires. So the people that we're sitting across from, enjoying a beverage at this beautiful rooftop, ask us a question. Remind you, we're just about to go to market with our very first product from our startup. The question they ask is, we love this product. What if there was a company that could come along and make the exact same product with a little bit higher quality, for a lower price because they have better and bigger manufacturing, and distribute it to far more people because they've already got great distribution built in. Now, mind you, it turns out that we are sitting across the table from the people who could actually do it. They are president of a bicycle manufacturing company that is located, or at least assembly that's located in Kisumu, Kenya, and distributes bicycles all over the world. The person is also the vice president of the largest bicycle component company in the United States, one of the largest worldwide. Me and my partner Ben look at each other and we say, that would be fantastic. Then we could move on to the next day. So I think this is the day that I actually started to realize what social entrepreneurship is. Social entrepreneurs are focused on the impact of their mission customers, whether it is our product or our company that creates that impact, or whether we're setting up someone else to carry the ball across the line and stand on our shoulders. It really makes no matter. If they take it up and achieve it, I get to go work on the next problem. It's not about me or us, it's about the customer. But that is not a definition, and I will admit I haven't seen a definition of social entrepreneurship that works for me. But if you tell me about a company, I can easily tell you if they are or are not a social venture or impact venture. As Judge Potter Stewart infamously said, I know it when I see it. He was talking about obscenity, kind of. And I think we have all seen some obscenity masquerading as social entrepreneurship in our days. I think we can all agree, though, at the heart of social entrepreneurship is impact. But every company, nearly every company at least, has some sort of impact on their customers. So what really is the difference between an impact entrepreneur and a regular entrepreneur? So I think the difference is that impact is planned and it is really the heart of the matter for that company. Okay? It is measured, it is funded, it is hired, it is the goal. Okay? It doesn't just happen. We plan it. We work with those who the impact is intended for, so that it works for them. Okay, so let's get back to chapter 1 of the story. My partner and I, Ben, started with a really clear goal: making life better for people who earned a living on bicycles, boda drivers. We actually were tasked with designing a new bicycle for them to replace the $70 Indian or Chinese-made Roadster that you see here. But honestly, you can't compete with a $70 bicycle in a really price-conscious market. So we set out to make using that bike more profitable, more reliable, and safer. These are people who, at the time, earned about $3 a day, and after expenses, typically took home about $1.90 a day. So where did most of these expenses go? Flat tires, or punctures as we call it. So repairs were about 1/3 of their income. So they lost about 1/3 of their income each day due to repairs on average. But flat tires alone were 25% of that income. And it wasn't unusual to have 4 or 5 flat tires in the course of a day. So they're actually also losing rides. And it shouldn't be a surprise. They are carrying often heavy loads on often poor roads with low quality tires and low quality tubes. So flats are bound to happen. So we developed a solution in our lab at a university, an airless inner tube that works with existing tires and existing wheels, and it never goes flat. We won an innovation competition, and we took our lab-grown solution, that's important, to Kenya to see how people would like it. So let me reiterate here, okay? We developed the entire product in a lab in Michigan, speaking to no boda drivers, and then landed in Kenya with the product, knowing absolutely no one. Well, actually, we knew like one person. It went about as well as you would think it went. They actually loved the concept and absolutely hated the implementation. They had 100 reasons why it wouldn't work for them. But it was great. Me and my partner, Ben Mitchell, literally just stood on a street corner, and every boda driver would stop to see what the two crazy Wazungu were doing with a bicycle and with a weird wheel. And we listened. We listened. After 3 weeks, we headed back home, literally back to the drawing board, but this time with boda drivers as our guides. Well, it took a while, more than a while, and some back and forth, but my partner Ben Mitchell and I finally got something that was close, and we headed to Kenya. And that is how Bicycle Ugunduzi was born, with a mission to make it more profitable, more reliable, and safer for people who depend on bikes for their living. So when I said we headed to Kenya, what I mean is we just picked up and moved there. Me with a wife and 2 high school kids. My business partner at the time owned a backpack and sold a car. But we were both given everything that we had. We had the notion of a final product, but riders like Joseph still didn't love it. We spent the next 9 months riding bikes with boda drivers. Every day, all day, almost, as we went through 90 prototypes, changing materials, changing fastening methods, etc., a whole bunch of stuff, until we hit it. And we ordered our raw materials and went into production. So we put the factory on the first floor of where we were living. We had Titus, still a good friend, in charge of production, and we were off. But unbeknownst to us, we had already made the mistake that would sink our dreams, ordering a shipping container's worth of raw tube because we got a volume discount when we actually had no sales yet, and blowing a good chunk of our runway. But that didn't matter. We were making and selling and boda drivers were happy. Okay, so we were off and running. We were happy too. We had won money from the Global Social Venture Competition, maybe a couple other places. USAID Div money was keeping us going. Life was good. And having worked so closely with all of these riders and knowing them so well, it made additional product development really easy. So while the Mileli tube took us about 2 years plus 9 months of riding or so in Kenya to develop it, our next products came together in a matter of months, all driven by boda driver needs. Again, life was grand. we had worked with our mission customers, and we had met their needs, right? That's fantastic. But there was a troll lying beneath the bridge that would prove to be the gatekeeper to our customers. And the trolls weren't happy. Mechanics. Mechanics were losing that money from fixing the flat tires. And they, not us, and not the stores that carried our products, they were where bicycle riders go as a source for what works and what doesn't. They really were the trusted source. We tried to cut them in, but it was a little too late, and the product was doomed without another strategy. Luckily, we had some of those other products that were selling really well, and that has allowed the company to slowly trickle along even to this day. So, I'll end chapter 1 of the story right here. So let's get started on chapter 2 now. Similar to chapter 1, another graduate student of mine, and even one named Ben this time, although Ben Savinant, had a great idea that led us to some research and then accidentally turned it all into a company. Spoiler alert, this chapter has an even better ending though. So Ben was a grad student of mine and also a Peace Corps volunteer teaching science in Tanzania. While he was there, he was always lacking in laboratory equipment for what he wanted to do with his students. So on one of my trips to Kenya, I crossed the border into Tanzania. I brought him a 3D printer so that he could make his own laboratory equipment, whatever he wanted. And really at that point, an idea was born. And when he returned to the US, we set out to see what could be done with 3D printing in such a setting. All of our reading, all of our discussions with all of the experts had led us to one pretty much unanimous fact. 3D printing will save the world. Everyone agreed that 3D printing was the key to unlock local innovation. Local supply chain issues and locally focused products, localized manufacturing, and distributed manufacturing as well. So we had stumbled into a really fruitful area. So while equipment, it was clear that schools could never, it was clear that schools could never really pay for the products that we could make. So they couldn't pay for the laboratory equipment, they probably couldn't pay for the printers, so there was some sort of problem that we still had to fix there. But everybody was talking about the medical equipment graveyards that were stranded and pretty standard behind large East African hospitals. If we could just design and print replacement parts for these, we could get all of the equipment back to saving lives. So we kept on reading about this and kept on learning about this, and it led us to another fact. It was all talk and no game. There were great stories about a part here or a part there done by some volunteers, but sustainable solutions were non-existent. I don't think anyone was even really trying to form a sustainable solution at the time. So we decided to launch Gershenson, focused on making localized manufacturing happen in support of global impact, with an eye to combine localized manufacturing and distributed manufacturing using 3D printing. Our company was based in Kisumu, Kenya, a place where we had good hospital connections and experience on the ground. It was also away from the entrepreneurship grind and expense that is Nairobi. Plus, we felt that these second cities like Kisumu, which were across the continent, were the keys to success. There are really just a few Nairobis in this world, but there are tons of Kisumus around the world. Every superhero has an origin story, and Gershenson is no different. Although we were born in that school in Tanzania, the idea for the company came in a laboratory in Kenya. In that lab, there were about a dozen microscopes that typically were used to diagnose malaria, and they were just sitting there, sitting idle. When we inquired why, what we learned was that they all lacked the same part, an adjustment knob that raised and lowered the stage. So we went back to our room with one of the broken knobs there. We reverse engineered it and showed up the next day with a printed replacement. And we could make these printed replacements for pennies on the dollar. It worked. And we realized 3D printing perhaps could save the world, actually, or at least a lot of broken medical equipment. So off we went running as fast as we could to create a company that solved this problem. An important part of any impact venture and a key part of social entrepreneurship is that impact must be measured. It must be sustainable, and it should be proven. So what we not so quickly learned is that any way you slice it, making replacement parts like these is a great thing and a horrible business. All of the machines are different. Even the similar ones are different. Even the ones in the same hospital are different models of the same machine. They get donated machines, they get secondhand machines, they get machines from other hospitals. The engineering time that it takes to design or reverse engineer each one of those different parts costs money. And no one is willing to pay that sort of money, that engineering time, for a small plastic part, even if it saves lives, and even if the hospital itself is going to make a lot of money by getting that machine back up and running. And the printed volumes of each one of these, the number of each that we could actually make, are not enough to give you any economies of scale to pay for that engineering time. So we needed to pivot. But we realized an important lesson here. We couldn't pivot without proving quantitatively that this wouldn't work and publishing for the world to see, somehow getting that information out. Because as an impact company, and really that was our goal, was to have an impact, I don't think it is enough to pivot until you get it right. Like, you can't just keep pivoting until you get it right. You may never get it right in the end. So you have to let the world know that unequivocally, you, meaning somebody else, should not go down the road that we just went down. That has value, and that allows others to stand on your shoulders. Unfortunately, we got that opportunity a lot. As we pivoted from one use of 3D printing to the next use of 3D printing. We launched our factory finally in mid-January of 2020, after lots of iterations and lots of research. I'll say again, mid-January of 2020. So there was a near immediate pivot as we became a regional PPE maker that's sitting in there too. We have found a way to get it right though. We are now the largest 3D printing company on the continent, at least by units produced. Mind you, I would still say that repeatable and scalable revenue is a moving target for us, even 4 years on at this point. We've figured out a few things though, specifically that there are two fruitful markets out there where 3D printing really does make sense. The first is bridge manufacturing. That is helping out large NGOs, or perhaps large companies, who have ordered medium to high volumes of products from overseas, but the supply chain has not worked out for them. We were able to quickly, but not cheaply, fill in the holes until their supply chain worked again. So this is an example of a fertilizer scoop that we made for 1 acre fund. We filled that gap for them so often that it has led to us convincing them to reshore some of their plastic products. And we are now in the engineering company that makes their injection molding happen for products in 4 countries, I guess, and getting ready to do a nearly 1 million unit order. So this is exactly what we're shooting for, though, even though it's not 3D printing. Localized manufacturing, reshoring that manufacturing back to Kenya, back to the locale where people are going to use the parts. So the second type of sustainable revenue comes from mass customized products. So 3D printing is great at making unique products because there's really little to no savings from economies of scale of manufacturing, from making many of the same thing. So if you can find a product that requires very little effort to customize it, but yet is definitely customized, it is perfect for the process. The best example might be prosthetics and orthotics. So here you see an ankle-foot orthosis that we made for Cure International. You see how kind of it fits. So their clinicians customize the design electronically for each patient, and then they send us a file, and we can send them back the device. Actually, we can even set up a small factory because 3D printing, we can set up factories in less than 24 hours typically. So we can set up a small factory, meaning just a few printers in a small, almost closet, right at their clinic. And we, if we are co-located, can do that entire process in 3 to 5 hours. So think about it. At that point, the patient doesn't have to travel long distances at great expense and great difficulty 2 to 3 times to get what they need. They can do it all in one shot. So I said this is a story with 3 chapters. So now it is time for the 3rd chapter of our story. I started my career as an academic in a really typical fashion and with a baby face. There aren't a lot of pictures of me with a baby face, it seems. And I grew that into a large lab with a dozen graduate students at its height, and over the course of it, bringing in millions of dollars. But when I caught on to the fact that my papers and my research really had little impact on the world around me, and then my students started to push me to use my skills to launch social ventures, I became increasingly upset with what I was doing. That's a picture of me being upset. It's actually a picture of me being happy, but sometimes you can't tell the difference. And I would say my university was not too pleased as well, right? Like, I was switching paths on them, okay? So for me, I really felt it was time for a change. I found the perfect landing spot at Penn State, directing the HESI program. Humanitarian engineering and social entrepreneurship. So I have students from all majors working with all sorts of stakeholders across Kenya and beyond to identify hairy global development problems and then co-design appropriate tech-based solutions to those problems, and then co-develop a business model that can get those solutions into the hands of 1 million or more people who need it. And then we support the launch of those companies. So basically what we're doing is supporting the resources and the time-intensive first couple years of the entrepreneurship journey as these social ventures are getting launched. So even here, this idea of pivot and prove has been really important. So I pivoted the program in a few different ways. I pivoted the program to a largely market-based for-profit solutions. Not completely, but a little bit more focus on that sustainability. So we made a big switch as well to the program to collaborate and trial all the work in one area. So teaching the students the value of reciprocity and long-term relationships. And we picked Kisumu, Kenya, because as you heard in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, it's a place I've returned to quite a number of times over the last 15, 16 years. So I came to, another pivot is that I came to Penn State thinking that I could convince students to use their education to change the world and not just enrich themselves. So I thought if I could turn their focus just 5% towards impact, right? It would be fantastic because I had access to 40,000 students. And that could be a huge impact, right? A little bit times 4,000. So what I quickly learned, though, is that not all 40,000 students are listening, really listening to anything. Probably at any campus. I don't mean to call out Penn State. And finding the ones who will listen is just too difficult, especially post-pandemic. So what I did was I pivoted towards finding 100 students who were really interested in this and pivoting their minds 95% towards impact. And that has worked really well, I think. I also came in thinking that I would convince these students to move to Kenya and start these ventures just like I did. What I learned is that not everyone is crazy as I am, and the people that I've done it, and that 22-year-olds have a significant debt. Yeah. And then, as I said before, I think the big focus that we had then with these students is we moved towards supporting the launches of these companies instead of being the launch team. Impact still has to be the goal. So the program impacts communities through the ventures that we help launch with others, okay? The program impacts our partners and stakeholders that we work with through collaborative work, through collaborative funding, through collaborative publishing, and really helping to shine a light on their organizations as well. And I guess the third one is that the program, of course, impacts the students that are part of it by giving them the tools that they need to enact change in the world around them, giving them also the peer community of the others who hope to do the same thing and also have impact careers. And as well, I think we spend a lot of time counseling them as they try to plan their path forward. And some even go to work for the ventures that get launched, okay? But that is no longer one of my goals. Okay, so here I am. I am at the end of chapter 3. I have one venture that is small, but does still sell products that reduce flat tires in and around Nairobi now. I have a thriving but not completely steady localized manufacturing company based in Western Kenya that's still going strong. And I have a truly flourishing academic program at Penn State. So let's go back to the phrase that was at the heart of this talk and in triplicate on the very first slide. So I love this little motto that I came up with somebody else. It is at once a command that reminds me what the purpose of my work life is. But it also contains within it the key 3 actions needed to achieve that purpose. So I have to go to where the people and problem are and work with them. I have to do something about it and don't just talk and don't just write papers about it, okay? And then I think it demands that I focus on and measure achieving positive change. So now for the epilogue to this story, which was written and thought of rather recently. So as I watch funding disappear overnight, that leads to programs ending abruptly, people losing jobs around the world, and likely to lead to millions of deaths directly caused by this. I am honestly unsure where I'm sending my students and what will happen to the communities that I collaborate with. But if impact is their North Star, the students, and if impact remains my North Star, and your North Star as well. I think the methods and the means to achieve that impact might be changing significantly right now, but the end results are still possible, okay? They are still possible. I do still feel that we have a lever, perhaps even a stronger lever and definitely a more important lever to achieve change. And as I close the book on this story, I think that is the beauty of being a social entrepreneur or an impact entrepreneur. It is that the focus is never on you or on the vehicles that you use to achieve impact. Not even whether you and yours are the ones to achieve the impact. The focus, the North Star, is just the impact. So again, my name is John Gershenson. And it has been an absolute pleasure being here with you. And while I don't believe in astrology, if you feel that your North Star and my North Star are well aligned, do me a favor. Please reach out to me and see what we can do together. Thank you, and it's been a pleasure being here.